You care deeply about something right now, and that caring is slowly destroying your ability to get it. The tighter you grip a goal, the more your performance degrades, your creativity shrinks, and your decisions start optimizing for anxiety instead of progress. There's a way to release that grip without losing the drive underneath it. And most people who try get it backwards, they confuse letting go with giving up, and end up stuck in a gray zone where nothing hurts, but nothing moves either. The problem starts with a misunderstanding about what attachment actually does to your brain. When you lock onto a specific outcome, the promotion, the relationship working out, the number on the scale, your entire cognitive system narrows. Your field of attention shrinks to a tunnel. You start filtering every experience through one question: am I closer or further from the thing I want? A Tuesday where nothing happens becomes evidence of failure. A compliment from a friend gets dismissed because it came from the wrong person. You're living inside a scoring system you built, and every moment gets graded. This is measurable. Researchers studying goal pursuit found that rigid attachment to outcomes increases rumination and decreases flexible problem solving. The more you fixate on a result, the worse you get at adapting when circumstances shift. You become brittle. And circumstances always shift. So people hear advice like, let go of the outcome, and they try it. They try to stop caring. They practice indifference. They tell themselves the goal doesn't matter, and for a few days there's relief. The pressure lifts. But then something else disappears with it. The energy. The morning motivation. The reason to push through the boring middle of any worthwhile project. They've thrown the engine out with the exhaust. That gray zone has a specific texture. You recognize it if you've been there. You're calm, but the calm feels hollow. You're not anxious anymore, but you're also not building anything. You scroll more. You cancel plans. You describe yourself as going with the flow, but the flow has no current. It's standing water. So what separates healthy detachment from apathy? The answer lives in where you anchor your investment. Attachment to outcomes means your emotional state depends on results you can't fully control. Detachment done right means shifting that investment to the process, the daily actions, the quality of your effort, the way you show up regardless of what the scoreboard says. This sounds like a poster on a gym wall. Stay with me, because the mechanism underneath it is what makes it work. When your identity is fused with a result, every setback is an identity threat. You don't just lose the deal, you become someone who loses deals. You don't just get rejected, you become someone who gets rejected. The emotional weight of failure triples because it's carrying your self-concept on its back. Shift the anchor to effort and engagement, and failure changes shape. A lost deal becomes data, a rejection becomes a draft. The emotional hit lands, but it doesn't crater your sense of who you are. Buddhist psychology has a term for this, upadana, usually translated as clinging. The teaching distinguishes between desire, which is natural and necessary, and clinging to the object of desire as though your survival depends on it. You can want the promotion without needing the promotion to feel whole. The wanting provides fuel, but clinging provides suffering. They feel identical from the inside, which is exactly why most people can't separate them. So how do you actually do this in practice? Because understanding the concept changes almost nothing. The first move is brutal in its simplicity. You identify what you can control, today, just today, and you pour your energy exclusively into those actions. The outcome of the job interview is outside your control. The preparation is inside it. The response to your manuscript is outside. The quality of the next paragraph is inside. This sounds basic. Doing it consistently, especially when the stakes feel high, is one of the hardest cognitive skills a person can develop. Athletes train this separation for years. A sprinter who thinks about the gold medal during the race runs slower than one who thinks about driving their knees. The research on this is consistent across domains, from surgery to chess to public speaking. Performance peaks when attention sits on execution, and degrades when attention drifts to evaluation. You felt this yourself. The best conversations you've ever had were ones where you forgot to monitor how the conversation was going. The second move is learning to hold desire without urgency. Urgency is the feeling that if this doesn't happen soon, something terrible follows. It's the internal countdown timer that turns every goal into a deadline and every delay into a crisis. Detachment means removing the countdown while keeping the direction. You still walk toward the thing you want. You just stop running from the fear of not getting it. There's a physical component to this that most people miss. Urgency lives in the body. The tight jaw, the shallow breathing, the forward lean as though you could reach the future by tilting toward it. Catching these signals and deliberately softening them, unclenching, breathing deeper, sitting back, sends feedback to your brain that recalibrates the threat level. The body and the mind negotiate constantly. You can enter that negotiation from either side. Critics of this approach raise a fair point. Some urgency is useful. Deadlines produce action. Pressure creates diamonds, or whatever the motivational poster says. And they're partially right. External structure helps. A reasonable deadline with consequences does improve output. The distinction is between structured urgency, which is a tool you pick up and put down, and existential urgency, which runs constantly like an engine you forgot to turn off. The first one serves you. The second one erodes you. Most people are running on the second kind and calling it ambition. The third move, and this is where people usually drop the practice, is tolerating the discomfort of uncertainty. When you detach from outcomes, you lose the illusion of control that attachment provides. Clinging feels terrible, but it also feels like you're doing something. Letting go means sitting with the open question, will this work out? And continuing to act without an answer. That ambiguity is physically uncomfortable. Your brain treats unresolved questions as open loops, and open loops consume cognitive resources until they're closed. The skill is learning to carry open loops without closing them prematurely. Premature closure is what drives most bad decisions. Accepting a mediocre offer because the uncertainty of waiting felt worse than the certainty of settling. Staying in a dead situation because at least you know what tomorrow looks like. The ability to tolerate not knowing, while still moving forward, is the actual definition of courage in everyday life. It just looks quieter than people expect. Here's where the apathy trap reveals its real mechanism. Apathy masquerades as detachment because both involve a reduction in emotional intensity. The difference is directional. Detachment reduces the intensity around results, while maintaining or increasing the intensity around action. Apathy reduces intensity across the board. One is a scalpel, the other is anesthesia. You can test which one you're practicing with a single question. Am I still making things? Still initiating? Still choosing discomfort when it serves growth? If yes, you're detached. If you're mostly avoiding, mostly passive, mostly comfortable, that's the anesthesia talking. The paradox, and this is the part that only makes sense after you've lived it, is that letting go of outcomes tends to improve them. When you stop gripping the result, your decision-making clears up. You take smarter risks because failure doesn't threaten your identity. You negotiate better because you're willing to walk away. You create better work because you're focused on the work itself instead of performing for a judge who may never show up. There's a specific moment in the practice when it clicks. You're working on something that matters to you, maybe deeply, and you notice that the fear of it failing has gone quiet. The desire is still there. The effort is still there, but the desperation has dissolved, and in its place is something steadier, lighter. You care about the outcome the way you care about weather on a hiking day. You'd prefer sunshine, you'll walk in rain. That's the target state. Full investment in the process, open hands around the result. It takes practice measured in months, and it breaks down regularly under stress. You'll catch yourself white-knuckling a result you thought you'd released, and the catching is the practice. Every time you notice the grip and soften it, the pattern weakens slightly. Slightly. Over hundreds of repetitions, slightly becomes the default. The quiet thing nobody mentions about this skill is what it costs. You give up the fantasy that wanting something badly enough makes it happen. You give up the comfort of believing your suffering proves your dedication. You give up the drama of the all-or-nothing narrative. What you get back is your attention, the single most valuable resource you own. Return to the only place it was ever useful, the next action, right in front of you. And that same mechanism runs in reverse with the past, with memories you grip just as tightly as future goals, which is a different kind of uncomfortable entirely.